What's going on, YouTube? Today it's a very exciting day for Catholics. Really, the world. The church belongs to the world, so Habemus Papam. If you don't know what that means we have a pope. It is the phrase that pretty much in modern, at least in all of modern history, it's a phrase that's been echoed, usually by the cardinal deacon, after the conclusion of a papal conclave. So what I want to talk about in this stream is sort of my thoughts on Pope. Well, the choice. I can't. We obviously cannot judge him as a pope. He's been pope for less than a day, so I'm not going to judge him as a pope. I'm certainly not going to judge him as a bishop or as a church leader. But what I will, I kind of want to give my thoughts on how I feel about him in terms of his views. The cardinal that was elected is Cardinal Robert Prevost. I'm not sure how you say his last name. Now, look, as an American myself, I was overjoyed to hear that an American was chosen to be the next pope. Um, Now, this is actually the first time ever that a pope is from the United States. And to be honest with you, I wasn't sure if I would ever actually live to see that. I felt like we were still very far from that. But no, it happened. And now I kind of know how people from South America felt when Pope Francis was elected. This is how they felt. Um, it's an amazing thing to witness. Um, so he chose there are two things I like about what he chose, in terms of, or two things that he's done already as Pope that I like. First of all, his papal name. He chose the name Pope Leo the 14th. Now, we have not had a Pope Leo since the early 1900s. I believe since 1903. That's when Pope Leo the 13th died. Um, this is huge that he chose this name. Pope Leo the 13th, if you have no idea who that is, was an extremely influential pope. He's one of the most popular popes since Trent. I mean, he is just so popular especially among traditionalists. The reason why he's so popular, if you know your history, you'll know that in the late 1800s, early 1900s, which is when Pope Leo III served as the successor to St. Peter, he sort of protected the church from many things that were going on in the world at that time. At that time, that was when the Industrial Revolution was happening. And remember, the Industrial Revolution was not just a manufacturing revolution. I mean, it coincided with many social revolutions that were going on at the time. Not all of them were bad, but some of them were. And he was very, he very much defended the faith. He was a very staunch traditionalist. So many people, of course, many traditions love Pope Leo III for that reason. So for Cardinal Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, to actually choose that name it's a very good sign. Another sign that he's not going to be if he is a liberal, he won't be as liberal as Pope Francis. Is when he walked out above on that balcony, he was wearing the red papal vestments that are typically worn when a new pope is announced. Now, the reason why this is important, in comparison to Pope Francis didn't do that. Pope Francis did not wear those vestments. Pope Francis, and this is really more so a example of his humility, but he didn't wanna look very glamorous. You never really see you didn't see him wear the red papal shoes, of course, he didn't wear that red papal vestment. He didn't wear any of that. He was very simple in terms of his dress as a pope, and is one of the staunch, features of his papacy was his simplicity when it comes to what he wore. He did not think the pope was, sort of royalty in that sense. And I honestly echo a lot of that sentiment. I like those kind of things. I'm not saying it's bad if someone does do it, but if I was Pope, I would feel, which is that's a weird thing to imagine, Pope Lance, right? But I would feel really weird, wearing that just because I mean, I don't know. I try to be humble, of course, and that doesn't really feel humble to me. But does not mean it's wrong for a pope to wear it. Some people actually say that it is humble to wear that kind of stuff. I mean, maybe they have a good argument. But Pope Leo XIV wore those vestments as Pope when he was first shown to the world. So that was really interesting. So those two things, those two signs, his papal name and then what he first wore as Pope, at least publicly, um, is very interesting. And it kind of signals that he might be moderate. Now, I say moderate and not traditionalist because he does have a history of being, well, an ally of Pope Francis, you know, in terms of his views. So he's much like Pope Francis, he's very staunch against, or not, I think everybody would be against climate change, but he's very much a vocal, advocate for climate change. I don't know, advocacy. Um, he I believe he worked with Pope Francis on something. It was bringing women into some sort of s- yeah, he agreed with Pope Francis' appointment of 3 women to the dicastery for bishops, which is a department of the Roman Curia of the Catholic Church that oversees the selection of most new bishops. Personally, I don't really mind that at all. I don't really think that's a problem. And the reason why I don't think it's a problem is not against church teaching. Um, but he has condemned homosexuality. He has condemned gender ideology. He has condemned the ordination of women to the diaconate, um, which is exactly what I want. I don't want. It's different to have a liberal interpretation of church doctrine and still adhere to church doctrine versus denying church doctrine. I think, and that's kind of the reasons why I did not hate Pope. Or I don't hate anybody, but I did not dislike Pope Francis because yes, he had a very liberal understanding of doctrine, but he did not deny church doctrine. He never embraced homosexuality. He never embraced gender ideology. In fact, there are cases where he did the very opposite of those two things, especially with the homosexuality one. If you've been keeping up with the news, you know exactly what I'm referring to. Pope Francis says some things I would never say about gay people. Pope Francis, he did not support ordaining women to the priesthood. He did not support them being ordained to the diaconate. So I mean, Pope Francis was liberal, but he still maintained to the teachings of the church, and that's exactly what I want out of a pope. Meaning, I want them to adhere to the church and um, you know, enforce the church's teaching. Um, he's also He voted. Okay, he's support now. I'm actually just reading off of the Wikipedia article here. Pope Leo, he opposed euthanasia, abortion, and the death penalty. Okay, that's all in line with church's teachings. He supported Venezuelan refugees in Peru during his time in Chiclayo. Now, he's kind of a weird bishop in terms of like where he served. He was born in Chicago. He was born and raised in Illinois. I think moved out of Chicago shortly after he was born, and he moved somewhere else in Illinois. He was raised there. He went to school here. He got most of his education here. I think he got his like his doctorate somewhere else though, but I might be wrong. But he's born and raised here, but he joined the Order of Augustinians, and he went on a Augustinian mission and in Peru, and kind of ever since then he has served in the church in Peru. Um, I think he was actually ordained in Rome, interestingly enough. So yeah, he was the prior general of the Augustinians. Um, but he was actually ordained a bishop fairly recently. I mean, he was ordained a bishop in 2014. That's not too long. I mean, that's 11 years. I don't know. Anyway. Oh no, 2015 is when he ordained a bishop. Okay. But yeah, he was ordained a bishop in Peru. Then he attained Peruvian citizenship. Um, so even though he's an American, he's also the first Peruvian to serve as pope, which is interesting. Hello, Vanessa. Go. But yeah, so it's pretty cool, pretty cool. But he's been a priest since the 70s. So anyway, so overall, I am optimistic about the future of the church. I'm optimistic about this pope. I love the name Pope Leo the 14th. I think it's a perfect name. Um, because I think we need a Pope Leo right now. I think we really do. Because I mean, sort of like what Pope Leo the 13th was dealing with at that time, so much social change and social change. We were going into a new world. I think we need someone like a Pope Leo. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Scott, but I'm very optimistic. Yeah, but we don't know that because we've not seen his papacy. We've just seen some of his views. We've seen some of things he has said, but he's in line with church teaching and everything he has said. And that's what I'm mostly concerned with. I think I saw a comment that I do want to read out. It was from Cameron Bertuzzi on Capturing Christianity. If you don't know who that is, Cameron Bertuzzi he's a Christian apologist, but he actually recently converted to Catholicism, I think like last year. And I really did like this. Let me share this. And I think let me just share this. Some words I really liked. He says, I'm honestly disappointed by what I've seen today. Let me make sure I'm actually sharing it. Okay. I'm honestly disappointed by what I've seen today across Catholic YouTube channels reacting to the election of Pope Leo the 14th. Every live stream I watch carried an undertone of judgment, as if we're all just waiting to evaluate our new Holy Father based solely on how closely he matches our personal values or expectations. He wasn't exactly what many expected. He's neither a staunch conservative nor a radical progressive. He's a centrist, somewhat akin to an American style Pope Francis. And for many, this seemed like a letdown. But here's the problem. This judgmental attitude misses the point completely. But that our personal preferences become the yardstick by which we measure the vicar of Christ. When did we start believing that we know better than the Holy Spirit guiding the church? This isn't the right attitude, especially at a moment like this, called first and foremost unity, humility, and trust. Rather than focusing on what Pope Leo XIV is not, maybe we should begin by being thankful for who he is, our Holy Father, chosen to shepherd the church through this next chapter. So that's kind of how I feel too. Well, I'm not going to judge his papacy based on um, actions that he's done or words he has said in the past. Though, I mean, I see why people are worried, but I don't think we need to be, and I'm not. And the reason why I'm not is like what Cameron said: the Holy Spirit's guiding the church. You know, every pope is chosen to be the pope at that very specific time for a very specific reason. I don't think it's a coincidence that a Pope Leo is that we have another Pope Leo at a time of extreme social change with in the world, in the West, specifically the West. Um, that's true too. I actually that's one of the first things I thought of when I saw that he was a Leo. Pope Leo was Pope Leo the 13th was like the first Pope on film. Wasn't he the first human to be on film too? Or no, no, no. He was the earliest born person to be recorded. I think that's what he was. And did you hear his brother say he found out he was in the running of the top three the day after Pope Francis died? What do you mean in the running? Like of the top three candidates? What's wrong with that? I'm confused. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not surprised that a Pope Francis like figure, was elected. I mean, look how many cardinals Pope Francis appointed. He appointed them because they're similar to him. It's against the rules of the conclave. Hmm, I don't know. Well, how would he know though? Well, I guess they weren't in conclave after Pope Francis died, so I mean they can. I don't know. I don't know, Scott. I don't know. I mean, who were the other two then? The other two cardinals. They didn't choose him outside of the conclave. He may have been one of the top three that the Cardinals maybe were considering, or I don't know. But they did not choose him prior to the conclave. Well, it looks like we're gonna have, um what does his brother know? From what I saw, yeah, I did see, part of the interview, and he said on there that, um, Pope Leo, when he was talking to his brother, he did not think he was gonna be pope. So I don't know. Sounds like we're getting conflicting things. All the previous Pope Leos. That's true. Pope Leo the Third. I'd have to watch the interview again though, Scott, to really understand what he said. Because I know what interview you're talking about. As I've said, I'm not worried at all, and I've really never been worried about who's gonna be pope because I mean, ultimately Christ will put someone there who needs to be there at that time for a very specific reason. So even the most evil, terrible popes that the church has seen in her 2,000-year history, there was some good that came out of their papacy. So overall, very optimistic about the future of the church. I mean, I don't think this guy, like I said, I mean, considering the name he chose and the fact that he was wearing the papal vestments, he's not going to be as progressive as Pope Francis. I mean, he's just not. He's already shown that he's not. He's already a little bit more traditional because of literally just by what he was wearing when he came out on stage or on the balcony. So, and I've seen other Catholics note that too, that uh, he seems to be a little bit more traditional compared to Pope Francis, at least. But yeah, he's also a moderate. He's also centrist. He's going to be liberal on other issues. I know he's been critical of Trump's immigration policies. Now, I'm not getting into that can of worms, but I'm optimistic. So now I would have preferred like I think Pizza Balla I think would have been maybe a better choice. Um, but it's what it is. So uh, guessing Scott's not excited. Uh, just pray for the Pope, Scott. Remember that. Pray for the Pope. Continue to do that. I think there are many people, I'm not saying you're doing this, Scott, but there are many people online who um they just can't help but criticize the Pope, but they never pray for the Pope. It's like, well then your criticism means nothing. If you want the Pope to be better, if you want the Pope to do better and be a better Pope, pray for him. That's the best thing you can do. So again, I'm not saying you're doing this, Scott, but there's people like Taylor Marshall and other people, other prominent Catholics that are, traditionalist Catholics, and even other just, Catholics online, oh, they criticize the Pope. They say that all these different things about him, um, but they don't pray for him. Or at least maybe they do. Maybe they don't. Who knows? But if they don't pray for him, I mean, that's not good. Even if you love the Pope, you should be praying for him always. So you also get, I believe, an indulgence, like a partial indulgence when you pray for the Pope too. So here's that. I might be wrong on that though. Don't quote me on that. I might be wrong, but anyway, overall, optimistic about the future. I know you're not, Scott. I'm just saying. Like I was just throwing his name out there because he's the first one that comes to mind when I think of radical traditionalists. But yeah, he might be better than I think he'll be better than Pope Francis. I mean, maybe he won't be a too much of a change, but he'll be a little bit of a change. So anyway, it's over. I'm glad we finally know who it is. So now I wonder when they're going to, because Carlo Acutis was supposed to be canonized on the 21st. Wait, no, it was the 27th. That's when it's supposed to be canonized, but of course, when Pope Francis died, they had to postpone that ceremony because they needed the Pope's approval to actually, canonize a saint. So hopefully, um, we will get a date as to when we will learn when he'll be canonized. If you don't know who that is, Carlo Acutis was a young man who um he was from, I believe, Argentina. No, he's from England, but he lived in where was he from? Somewhere in South America, I think. Uh, I don't know where he's from, but he's from Europe. He's from England. He was a teenager. And my computer is glitching. He was a teenager. He had a huge devotion to the Eucharist. He ran an online blog where he talked about Catholic miracles and Eucharistic miracles, Marian apparitions, various miracles that have taken place within the church. And he was very popular online, but he passed away in 2006 due to leukemia. So over the past almost 20 years, people have, of course, asking for intercession. There have been miracles associated with his intercession, and as a result, he is going to be canonized as a saint. Yes, yep, the first millennial saint. Um, which will take place, well, like I said, it was supposed to take place back in April, but with Pope Francis's very shocking death, that was postponed. So hopefully we will get an answer as to who will, or when Pope Leo will canonize him. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream. I want to do a quick stream, giving my general thoughts on our new Pope. No matter how you feel about him, pray for him. I certainly will, because he'll need it. But I'm optimistic about the future. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you guys very much for watching. God bless y'all. See y'all next time.